Thank
This
you.
conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Judah.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Good evening, everyone. I am calling the City Council meeting of June 24th at 4 p.m. to order. I will begin with roll call. Before I start, I did hear from Brenda Kinzer, Council Brenda Kinzer, and she said due to a meeting, she would not be able to join us tonight. So doing the roll call, Councilman Jared Couch.
Here.
Councilman Chuck Owen.
Here.
Councilwoman Jermaine Cornegay.
Here.
Councilman Brendan McGoffin.
Here.
Councilman Glenn Allen. Okay, and Councilman Carl DeYoung.
Present.
All right. So I have 5. That is enough for a quorum. We will move on. Looking for approval of the agenda, and this agenda would include late materials that have come in from Public Works, Mark Hauser. It is the Winnie Hauser paving project.
Mayor Johnson, I move the agenda.
All right, including the late materials.
I move the agenda with late materials.
Second, Councilman Owen.
Okay. So I have a motion by Councilman DeYoung, seconded by Councilman Owen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I only heard a couple. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
This is Jermaine, and I can see you, but I can't hear you. But I vote yes.
Okay. All right. Didn't hear any opposed, so motion carries. Looking for a motion for the consent agenda. Items 1 through 4.
Madam Mayor, I propose we accept agenda 1 through 4.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember DeYoung seconds.
So I have a motion by Councilman Owen, seconded by Councilman DeYoung. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. So we will move on to staff reports, and I will begin with Fire Chief Klinger.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Nothing new to report as of this date so far. No COVID patients transported, but the good news is we have delivered 1 baby. The baby was delivered last Thursday morning, and she's doing fine. And hopefully we'll get the information authorization to share that more information with you guys later. But we have requested it. That's all I have.
That's great news. Thank you. Police Chief Tucker.
All right, so I have 4 things. The first one is we're doing our prep for our 4th of July protest. The mayor and I had a very good conversation with the, I guess we'll call them organizers. I called one of them Pandora. They opened a box, and now they're having to deal with it. They've been very cooperative and very receptive to anything we've suggested. We have no intel on anything negative coming from this, and we're putting operations plans in place, making sure that we have as much help as we can. We don't have the manpower really to cover all of this, but we're hoping that just shutting down streets, allowing them to do their thing, and then having the other agencies nearby on alert will keep us covered. So we've got that going on. The mayor and I are working on some language to put out for the Governor Inslee's mask enforcement order. And we're trying to get out something on social media because we're already getting numerous requests for information. Thanks. And so we're working on that. And we've been doing a little bit more work in the skateboard park, talking to kids that are getting their bicycles in the park. And we've ordered a few bigger signs to deter some of the kids that are bringing their bikes in there. And the last thing, and I see Councilman Allen signed in, I did do a little checking on that speeding in the alleys question that came up. There's nothing in the Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code that I can see that there's anything but a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. However, like I'd mentioned before, I think we have a driving too fast for conditions. And so if we had somebody that was an egregious violator, we could apply that if necessary, or you can refer that to somebody. Just too safe for conditions, that's in any area in town. And we typically use it in icy or snowy weather. So with that, that's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. And yes, so for the record, Councilman Glenn Allen has joined us. Hello, Glenn. All right, Director of Building and Permit.
It was
John?
my ignorance, okay, that I couldn't get on. Okay.
No worries,
I'm
glad
not
to-
very good on computers.
All right, well, we'll move on to Director of Building and Permits, John Coleman.
Good evening, thank you. So the hearing examiner held a public hearing for the proposed Skagit County Stabilization Campus on Thursday, June 18th. It was a Zoom meeting, so it was strictly a virtual meeting. There was no public present. You know, there was no physical meeting point. There was a lot of people on the call and a fair amount of interest, a lot of discussion and conversation, and I think it went pretty well. The hearing examiner held the comment period open until Monday afternoon to make sure that people did have the opportunity to participate if they had trouble with the online meeting. So now it is in the hearing examiner's hands for a decision on the conditional use permit, and we're expecting that not until the end of the day. It's not due until the end of the day on July 6th. Aside from that, just been trying to catch up with a lot of projects going on around here. We have a lot of subdivisions, many small subdivisions, and just been quite busy, seeing a lot of new building permits being applied for now that the COVID closures are opening up a little. And that's all I have for now. I'll be speaking with you at length in a little while about a couple more topics.
All right, thank you, John. And Director of Public Works, Mark Freiberger.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just a few things. We'll be going through the public hearing for the Transportation Improvement Program in a few minutes. We are advertising for bids for our wastewater treatment plant electrical improvements tomorrow. We've got all the information posted up on that on the website, and looking to close those bids on the 16th of July. It's about a $700,000 project, and looking forward to getting that one underway. You awarded the Jameson Overlay Project tonight. We had good bids on that, and then also the late materials. One of those items was award of the Winnie Hauser Park paving, which we also had good bids on that project as well. So I guess the one silver lining, if there is any, to COVID-19 is we have significantly lower oil prices that we're able to take advantage of right now, and that's a good thing for our projects. Beyond that, I'll be bringing to you on July 8th, in association with the discussion on, well, I think we'll be having a discussion also on ADU fees and those kind of things. Our transportation impact fee update, which you saw at your last work session for a first hearing. And we'll be coordinating that with the ADU adoptions for fees. And finally, on July the 21st, Planning Commission is going to hear the sewer comp plan, and then it'll come to you on August the 12th for your first look at that as well. That's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. Director of IT, Bill Chambers.
So we've been doing a lot of public surplus online auctions lately, and Glenn's been outfitting police cars, deploying peripherals to support web-based meetings, and lots of web-based meetings and public hearings for building and planning and engineering. I'm considering moving the council meetings to the Zoom platform for our beginning in July, but I welcome your feedback on that. I don't want to overwhelm you with having to learn a new system, but there are some real benefits to moving to Zoom webinar. We've been using it for the Planning Commission meetings and for our staff meetings, and I really like it so far. Getting the fiber franchise agreement negotiations back up, and assisting with the CARES Act funding support for that. And that's it.
All right, very good, thank you. Director of Finance, Jill Scott.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you. I don't really have much new to report here. We're just keeping busy in the Finance Department and lots of just miscellaneous projects, working with Doug and staff members. Otherwise, we're just keeping busy.
All right, thank you. And our City Attorney, Nikki Thompson.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. I also don't have anything of interest to the group. Trying to help out in any way I can and really enjoying everything that I get to do with the city. So nothing to add.
All right, thank you, Nikki. We've sure enjoyed working with you. Thank you. And City Supervisor, Doug Merriman.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a few things. The first is the library is continuing on schedule. We're starting to do a lot more work now inside the library and actually starting to look like a pretty nice building in there. We're scheduled right now to be looking at substantial completion around the end of the third week of September. So you'll see work continuing, and hopefully there won't be any more delays or any closures or anything that will affect that schedule. One thing I did want to let council know about is you had passed the affordable housing sales tax ordinance a meeting or two ago, and I got notified by Department of Revenue that we're all set up. They've got everything they need, and they will start implementing that tax beginning on August 1st. So we'll have that. We'll get our first payment then probably around August 31st and go on from there. So we'll just hold that money in a special fund, and we'll have discussions at some point on how we would like to look at some of the things we can do with that money to be the funding source. One thing that's been a little quiet that is coming up is Hammer Heritage, and that's the park there and the monitoring that Department of Ecology is doing with groundwater. There's something that's called the Model Toxics Control Action, or MOTCA, and this is the cleanup process that the state of Washington uses for different sites, hazardous sites. And so I've been working with Department of Ecology to put that plan together. And this next week, Mark, our Public Works Director, and I, we will be panelists on a public participation meeting, just giving basic information about the project itself. There's not a lot of things set up yet. We don't have a project schedule, but you might see some trucks there as they start retesting the groundwater under that park and seeing what the size of that project might be. So you'll see a lot more taking shape there. And just looking down my list real quick, I think that is about all I have for today.
Okay. Thank you. I want to add to that. So along the lines of ecology, they have also put out a public participation plan, and they are accepting comments from June 22nd to July 21st. And that website is posted on, that link is posted on our website. And they are also doing a online public meeting, as Doug was saying, June 30th from 6 to 8 p.m. And again, if you want to participate in that or listen in on that, that link is on our website. So I've kind of started it here. I'll just kind of go through and finish what I have to share today. So as far as moving into phase 3, it's kind of good news, bad news. Good news is that we have been meeting all the requirements to enter phase 3. However, because of the increased cases of COVID here in Skagit County, the Department of Health is considering whether or not it is a good decision to move forward. So we'll be hearing more about that on Thursday and Friday, and we should know by Friday if the decision is made to move forward or not. And so stay tuned for that. Also, the governor, you probably read about this in the paper, but the governor, Jay Inslee, and Secretary of Health, John Weissman, announced a statewide mandatory face covering order that will take place or will be in effect Friday, June 26th, so 2 days from now. The order was in response to the reports of increase of COVID cases, and in particular throughout Washington state. So the governor and the secretary decided that a requirement to include the entire state in wearing masks was going to be part of that mandate. The governor shared that it was a necessary economic activity, that because of the necessary activity, more people are out in the community, and in order to keep them and each other safe, we need to be wearing masks. So we're working with that. We already do that here at City Hall, but we're going to be looking over some of our policies and see if we need to really tighten them down regarding that. Do want to make note, I have received a couple of emails from people who saw that the Lago Rodeo banners are up. They want to know, to them it's quite confusing. They said, I didn't think we were having Lago Rodeo, so why are the banners up? And that was actually the banners and flags and all of that is in a response to a contest that one of our citizens asked that we put on our website, and she is asking that all businesses and citizens, including the city, decorate the city because we're not having a 4th of July, to bring out those colors and to make it feel festive. So that's what that was in response to. But to alleviate the confusion, I did call Nathan and ordered that those banners be taken down, and the flags will be put up and then left up throughout the 4th. So just if you hear comments regarding that, that's what that is about. Also, Nathan and I will be participating in a RCO board presentation. We're hoping to acquire a couple of grants for the Olmsted Park to complete phase 1. So we're excited about that, and that is on Friday. We will be doing that. And then also we are moving forward with the 10 $5,000 up to $5,000 grants for small businesses. We're working with EDASC. I had a meeting with them today, and we're getting that all put together. The application should be online soon, and within the next day or two, and we will put it out there for a couple of weeks, and then EDASC will put together a board to vet them, and they will announce the winners of that. So trying to get all that information out, and as council members, if you can let small businesses know that is happening, that is great. That would be great. So that is all I have for now. So I will work into our council members. Councilman Couch, do you have anything to report at this time?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a follow-up question, I guess, to the comment you just made about the banners. How much staff time are we looking at for staff to go back out and take the banners down. I saw the banners. I think it's been made pretty clear that people know that Logger Rodeo is canceled, but
Right.
I guess for me, it's kind of nice to see something normal, you know, and to have
Yeah.
those colors up. We have the banners. I mean, what are we looking at to have somebody go out and take these down because a few people were confused?
Yeah, well, it's, I
Well,
know.
we
I
take
think
out roundabouts when people got confused with those. So
I'm sorry, say again?
I said we don't take out roundabouts because those confuse people. I mean, they're simply signs on light posts, and so they're
Yeah.
already up.
Well, it's not a big deal. According to Nathan, it's not a big deal to take them down, and they would be happy to do it. And he said that actually when they put them up, even his staff was not pleased about that because of the fact that we weren't hosting Logger Rodeo. So maybe it's more of a feeling that's out there than we are aware of. I kind of think it's a shame because, like I said, it was just in an effort to decorate the town and make it feel festive. But I have asked Nathan to do that, and so they're going to be doing that tomorrow morning. Not unless I receive, great opposition from my board here, but otherwise, that's what we'll do.
Well, I guess the last thing I'll say on it is I think it's, if they weren't up, I would understand it, but to me it seems a little bit ridiculous to send the staff back out to take them down, and
Okay.
we'll leave it at that. That's all I have.
Duly noted. Thank you.
So if I may, this is Jermaine. Flags and everything are up, but also the Logger Rodeo banners are up. I've been too busy to notice, but I can understand taking the banners down, but is it possible to still decorate the town with flags and everything?
Oh, absolutely.
Without the Logger Rodeo banners, so you know what I mean? We
Yeah.
still decorate the town without confusing folks? Is that what we're planning to do?
Yes, that's exactly what we're planning to do.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, Councilman Couch, was there anything else or?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Owen?
I got one thing I want to share with you. My wife and I took a trip up to the Northern State Cemetery, and I believe that's under the city's control now, but I was thoroughly disgusted when I seen it, that somebody had cut the grass. It was a hayfield. I mean, you couldn't see the grave markers. You had to go around kicking the hay off before you could find them. And right at the entrance there, it was all kind of Lover's Lane material laying there. And the public had to walk over it to get into the gate. And I was disgusted. I don't know what kind of a program the city's got set up for that park, but it deserves better than that. And I just wanted to pass that on to you, and you might want to drive up and take a look yourself.
No, I appreciate the information, Councilman Owen.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
We did receive funding. I don't know if you remember, we talked about that maybe about a month or so ago. We received a grant, and we are going to take that money and put a fence around it, and we're going to start beautifying the cemetery. But that's good. That's good feedback, and I appreciate you letting us know. Thank you.
Mayor, this is Mark. Just a comment for Chuck. I've walked that a couple times over the last few weeks, and part of the challenge we have on cutting the grass up there is it's extremely wet over much of the cemetery, and to the point where a mower would have sank to the wheels. And I'm kind of answering for Nathan, I guess, but I think it's been just impractical to get up there to mow it until very recently. And so we will discuss it and see what else we can do. Maybe we can use a grass catcher as we mow that site. I'll see what's possible, but I did want to let you know there are some challenges with that site because of the type of soils there, and the rain we've had this year has made it pretty tough. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Freiberger. Okay, Councilwoman Cornegay.
Hi, Mayor, nothing to report.
Thank you. Councilman McGoffin.
Hi, nothing to report today. Thank you.
Councilman McGoffin, I'm curious, have you announced the winner yet of the Stay Home Shuffle?
It should be announced pretty shortly here. It was Matthew, the first person that uploaded the video.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Councilman Allen.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I don't want to pick on any departments, but I've got 4 kudos tonight. Thank you, Lynn, for exploring the speed limit. Nathan has responded to me on a concern really quickly. The city sewer, it wasn't our yard, but they took care of a neighbor's problem. And solid waste, I think, is going out of their way. And I don't want to leave anyone out, but I think all of our city departments are doing a bang-up job.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Allen. And Councilman DeYoung.
Thank you, Mayor. Just some kudos to some neighbors that would like to remain anonymous that I ran across this morning while walking Centennial Trail. Retired couple that were using some plastic bags to pick up trash along the trail, and they do this on a pretty regular basis. And I thought that was just great to see the community taking care of one of our great city jewels of that trail, and just making it better for everybody. And one of the great reasons why people love Sedro-Woolley so much is how much care we bring to it. Then I had a question about the Independence Day event. We don't have enough police officers, or we're going to be able to bring in our community patrol from other regions, and it's listed as a protest. So I was wondering if we knew what they were protesting, because that wasn't very clear to me, and I'm just concerned about the staff time that's being taken in that.
Yeah, the protest has to do against Governor Inslee's directives. I'm trying to remember how they worded it. I think his tyrannical directives through this COVID process. They were upset about the fact that businesses were shut down. They're not for the social distancing or the wearing of masks. So it's and those that we spoke to there, they seem they're good people, and I'm all for a peaceable protest, and that's what this is about. I don't know if Chief Tucker wants to address the issue regarding kind of backup. I think he kind of stated that, but maybe there's more of a clear answer. Chief Tucker, are you on?
Yeah, I had to move to the fire chief's office, so my iPad locked up. Yeah, we've got a pretty comprehensive plan as to how, I don't know why that thing's still on. I have a pretty comprehensive plan as to how to work this out. Lieutenant McElwraith came up with a plan. We're going to have all the other agencies that are busy as well on board, just in case we need them. Jared's going to be in the area with one of his guys in case we call for help. But we got to, unless we see an articulable threat that comes up on our some of our intel gathering, which we'll do our kind of our last review on July 2nd. I'm not really too worried about the people we got coming. We aren't really a target for big counter protesters, so that's my only real concern.
So my follow-up question is, I believe the governor has stated, what is the penalty if you're not wearing a mask in public starting Friday? I believe it's a misdemeanor. And so that's also part of my question is that going to be a complaint driven process, or is this going to be, law enforcement going by and treating it like, hey, your tabs are up, so I'm going to pull you over so we can have a conversation? Can you tell me how that's going to be working in the community when you see folks violating that order, please?
Well, the mayor and I and the fire chief and the assistant fire chief had a discussion about that today. I'm meeting with the other chiefs and the sheriff and hopefully the county prosecutor tomorrow on this, just to make sure we all know what our limitations are. We are not the mask police. This is not a good use of the police department. However, a really good use of the police department is kind of exactly what you're alluding to. If we see people that are violating the order, it's a good opportunity to stop, talk, suggest. If we have somebody that wants to go down the route of, we're going to butt heads with you and we're going to fight the tyrannical rule of Governor Inslee, then ultimately we could refer somebody to the prosecutor's office. We do not have this ordinance in our municipal code, so we don't charge this into our court. We'd have to charge it into the district court for a state law violation. But we really don't anticipate doing this. We're not going to be stopping and IDing people to see if they're over 5, if they're not wearing a mask. We're not going to get in knockdown, drag out fights with anybody either. It's kind of like enforcing no bicycles in the park over here at the skateboard park. There's real good reasons for doing it, but it's also not worth getting in wrestling matches with people and all that. So we're thinking through a lot of what we're doing, and I've actually crafted a social media post that we can push out, and the mayor's reviewing it to add her take to it as well. And I think we're going to have a collaborative approach. I took a post that the State Patrol put out that's a little bit too political speak for me. I wanted to get a little bit closer to Sedro-Woolley geared. That's why I wanted the mayor to put her take on it and have her and Doug take a review on it. So we'll be putting out kind of our basic philosophy in the next day or two, and then just kind of go from there. We're going to treat this kind of like we treat the rest of the COVID quarantine. It's really doesn't make sense for us to go arrest people for not wearing a mask, but also we can't ignore it completely. So we have to dance kind of a fine line. And we plan on doing that dance.
Well, I really thank you for thinking this through, and I hadn't heard the kind of the granular detail that you're bringing out, and I really appreciate that transparency, Chief. And thank you for all the hard work the department's doing. Thank you very much.
Well, we're trying to pawn this off on the fire chief, but he's thinking that we're probably better suited for it. And he's laughing at me right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And moving on, we're going to be public comment. And usually at this time, the public comment period is closed. I did receive a public comment from Carol Torsett. She's a secretary for the Sedro-Woolley Lions Club. And she says, Dear Mayor Johnson, I am sending a link to the Lago Rodeo 2020 virtual grand parade for you to announce at public comment this Wednesday. Since Lago Rodeo has been canceled due to the pandemic, Sedro-Woolley Lions took the project on of a virtual parade and have placed it on YouTube this year. And I want you to know that we have taken the link, which she is showing here, and we have posted it on both our city website and also our city Facebook. And I'm hoping that the Sedro-Woolley Police Department will do the same. The Sedro-Woolley Lions want to express their sincere thanks to the mayor and her husband, Eric Johnson, and to past council member Brett Sandstrom and Lago Rodeo President Dottie Chandler and the Lion members who submitted pictures and videos. The virtual parade is just under 10 minutes and includes pictures of past parades, including historical ones, wood carving, logger rodeo, and fireworks. And Carol says, have fun viewing it and looking for Sedro-Woolley, look for the Sedro-Woolley people that you know in it. And I have to say, I took the time to watch it, and it's amazing. It's very, very good. It's well done, and I encourage everybody to check it out. So thank you, Carol and the Lions Club and all of the you who worked on that video. It's fantastic, and it's quite honorable that you have done this for us for the 4th of July, for all the citizens for the 4th of July.
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
would it be possible for us to push that out on our city social media page to get that out to, you know, more folks so everybody can?
Yeah, it is. That's what I said. It's on our city Facebook, and it's also on our city website.
Didn't catch that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, good point. Yeah, it's great. I hope you all take the time to watch it. So I will try this. We will attempt this to see if there is anybody who wants to make public comment. Bill and I had this talk to see if we were going to be able to make that possible. So do we have anyone from the public who would like to make a comment? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we will move on to the public hearing. And this public hearing is for the proposed 6-year Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, for 2021 through 2026. I'm going to open up this public hearing. And as of today, we have not received any written comments on the proposed 6-year TIP program. But again, is there anyone in the public online who would like to make comment? Okay, hearing none and seeing nothing pop up on my screen here. Because this is a first read, the public comment will remain open until our next council meeting, which is July 8th. So if there's anyone who would like to make comment at that time, we can have those read into the record. All right, thank you. So moving then to Mark Freiberger. Mr. Freiberger, do you want to take it from here?
Thank you, Mayor. Bill, if you would move that forward to the first slide of the PowerPoint presentation, I would appreciate that. Thank you. And so this is our presentation of the 2021 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program, which we usually refer to as the TIP. Next slide, please. So just a few summary comments. I know you've heard this from me quite a few times. I was thinking about it earlier, and this is, I guess, about the 13th time I've done this here for the city. So it gets kind of program dense. So anyway, we do this yearly. We update our transportation improvement program for inclusion in the regional TIP that SCOG, Skagit Council of Governments, maintains, who then forward that to the state for inclusion in the statewide TIP. We have to have our version of the TIP adopted and submitted to SCOG by July 31st so they can make their schedule. This inclusion in the TIP for projects is required for most state and all federal funding for the road projects that we do. Projects that are on the TIP have to be on the federally functionally classified arterial streets list. That's a federally approved listing of arterial roads that are eligible then for federal funding. And I was thinking about giving you a slide to show you how that works, but basically that's our major streets like Metcalf, Ferry Street, Township, those kind of streets like that accept more traffic than the local access streets do. Just an interesting aside, as we were preparing the scoping study for the Jones-John Liner Trail Corridor project, part of those projects, as you know, are on new alignment, and we got into a rather interesting catch-22. On the sections on Trail Road, which are new, we had requested functional classification for that, along with the parts that are on existing streets. And due to some relatively recent rule changes, they wouldn't classify those new sections. They said that those projects can't be classified until they are funded to go to construction within 4 years. And that's kind of an interesting point for them to take, because most of the funding requires inclusion in the TIP, in the to be functionally classified before they will fund it. So you can kind of see it's a circular problem, which we're trying to work through with the Council of Governments and the other agencies, which no doubt have ran into this same problem. Basically means you have to self-fund your projects at least through the design phase in order to get a project on the federal functional classification system. And that's not a reasonable way to do this, and I don't believe it's the intention of the federal process, and so we're having that discussion. Also, a public hearing is required, and we just did that, so that meets the requirement. As you know, for the last several years, we had been doing a public hearing at the Planning Commission, but because of the limitations on public involvement due to COVID-19, we didn't do that this year, and we had it at council instead. So that does fulfill the requirement. The 2021 to 26 TIP and the expanded version to go out to 2040 are based on updated projects identified in our 2017 Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Chapter 3, Transportation Element, which we adopted back on May 9th, 2018. Next slide. So the primary focus for the next 6 years, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record on this now, but will be predominantly the Jones-John Liner Trail Corridor projects. That's broken up into 8 projects, and we have those in the TIP to take place between 2020 and 26. That's, of course, totally driven by funding availability. We also are working on the SR20, SR9 Township Intersection Improvements projects. That's already funded. We are designing it now. I just was communicating with TSI, our designer, a few minutes before the meeting started. We're expecting the right-of-way documents to be submitted to DOT for their review in the next week. And we are looking to have 60% plans in mid-July and the full 100% plan package by the end of August. The main thing I'm trying to carry forward on that, just because the estimate for that project was fairly old. We had originally applied for funding 3 years ago on that. Been a fair amount of inflation, although some of that's mitigated with COVID. But I'm a little concerned that we have enough construction phase dollars for the project. So my intention is to, as soon as we have the updated estimate, I'll look at that and decide if we want to submit a second TIB application to supplement our funding that we have. So that's an option for us, and I think it would probably do okay if we need that. So that's in the back of my mind to carry that forward as the design proceeds, and you'll be hearing from me more on that as we get closer to the TIB application time. The John Liner Road Bicycle Pedestrians Improvements projects, which we also have federal funds through SCOG on, which is a project we're trying to get done. On the chance that we get funding for the undercrossing at Jones and John Liner in advance of the rest of the project, we wanted to have a sidewalk in place for safety purposes for the kids that walk that way to the schools. And then finally on this, we also have funding for the SR20 Cascade Trail Phase 2A project from Holtham to Hodgen. We've got design that's been happening in conjunction with the SR20 lane widening project, which we're going to be going to construction on shortly. The trail is related to that, basically covers the same length of the road there. So we've been doing design in concert with that in terms of environmental and survey and all the rest of that. And David, after we get through the busyness of this year building those projects, we'll move into finalizing the design on this trail project. Secondary focus for the next 6 years is maintenance of our existing arterial streets via our overlay program. A good example of that is the Jameson project, which we just awarded tonight. That had TIB funding supported by funding from our TBD, which of course is now challenged by passage of I-976. We've been allocating $100,000 a year from TBD to use for either direct paving projects or to match things like Jameson. We've been able to patch the funding hole that 976 created by use of REIT funds for this year to complete the Jameson project. Going to be more problematic in future years. We had already discussed previously the possibility of a 0.02 sales tax requiring a vote of the public. The timing for that doesn't seem good right now with everything going on with COVID, so we're probably going to have a hollow year next year for funding for an arterial street program overlay project. I am going to look at applying for TIB funds for an overlay. Generally speaking, we've only been getting those every 2 years, so this would be an off year for us anyway. That probably works all right. If I can figure out how to put the match funds together, we'll apply anyway, because you never know. We've been somewhat successful with double project awards in the past, and I know TIB is very interested in our corridor projects, and I'm relatively optimistic that if we're able to obtain the county economic development funds that we recently applied for, that TIB will follow suit with some funds to fund that entire project. So the third focus that I have on the slide is our ADA ramps and sidewalk program. You approved on the consent calendar tonight a contract with TSI to prepare our ADA transition plan and complete the inventory that we've been doing in the city over the last months. As I'm sure you read the memo that accompanied that, it was a bit more expensive than we anticipated, but we have broken it up into 2 years, and it's pretty important for us to get that effort done. We have a deadline of April 21st of 2021 to have our transition plan in place, or else we would not be eligible for federal funding. So pretty important for us to do that, and they have a lot of work to do, so we needed to get them going. So I appreciate council's moving forward with that. Next slide, please. So this is just a slide from our transportation plan that I've updated with a couple of projects that are completed. These are the projects that are on the state routes, SR20 and SR9. We've been doing pretty well. We've completed 3 projects and have the lane widening project on the books for this summer, and it's already been awarded. So we're knocking these projects off pretty well. Next slide, please. And these are the city street arterials. And again, I've marked a number that we have completed: Jameson, the Ferry Street overlay, and North Township overlay projects. All have been completed in the last couple of years. And this one shows, of course, the Jones-John Liner corridor projects as well. Next slide, please. And this is just the transportation impact fee version of those 2 slides you just saw. And again, I've marked some complete projects there. Next slide, please. And of course, this is a color version of the Jones-John Liner corridor. I was talking a bit at length about the application that we did with ED. That is the project in the kind of brown shading to the very right of the project at John Liner, McGargle, and Highway 9. Next slide, please. And this is just our updated 1 page for the project. We have been continuously updating this. This one was done when we finished the scoping study and got the updated estimates for the project. Next slide, please. This is just a wireframe vicinity map for that same 1-page description. Next slide. So this is a summary of the changes from the 2025 tip to the 21-26 tip. We completed 3 projects, or will have completed them: the SR20 West Lane widening, which is scheduled, as I mentioned, for this summer, and Jameson as well. And then the Jones John Liner Trail scoping study is actually complete as well. I'm in closeout with that for the federal funds that we had on that. And we're already using that document to good measure. We've provided that to DOT for their review, and we've been distributing that around the legislature when we visited there in January. TIB was very appreciative to have that document and is excited, as I mentioned, about supporting that. So that was money very well spent and moved us significantly forward on our effort to fund that project. I did add to the list Wicker Road overlay. It's one we will probably do with local funds, but I wanted it in the tip just in case we had an opportunity to pick up some other funding for that. We had originally planned to do Wicker this year. It was one of the projects that we deferred due to the COVID-19 budget impacts. And then finally on this slide, in 2020 to 25, we had 21 projects on the tip. This year we have 19 on the updated tip. Next slide, please. And this is just a summary of the projects that have been shifted around within the tip change there. I won't go through all of those, but I've kind of described a lot of this already. And mostly it's minor changes by year as we move forward. The tip is, of course, a living document. We update it every year because of funding. Some projects move forward, some don't, and so we change them around within the tip. And I also update the estimates. For instance, most of the Jones John Liner projects updated to the new scoping study estimates now, and we'll carry those forward as we go into the future with this. Next slide, please. And on the longer term tip, there were a few projects that changed on that for the same reasons I just basically described. Any projects that were in 2026 last year are now in the 6-year tip. There was one of those. And I added a placeholder for an overlay project in 2040. And again, I adjusted projects a year or two and the estimates for inflation. And there's the same number of projects in the longer term tip this year as last year at 38. Next slide, please. I won't go through these in detail, but they're there for your review if you choose. This is a list view of all of the projects in the 6-year tip. Bill, you can kind of just go down through those. 2 pages for the 6-year tip, and then there's the longer term 14 years that go out to 2040 that follow that. And then finally, keep going, Bill, one more and another and another. Okay, so we also track projects that are done in our annual maintenance, 3 of them that are local significance. CW1 is our sidewalk program. We've already discussed that some tonight. We normally budget about $50,000 a year from REIT for sidewalk repairs and maintenance. We've been using those pretty successfully the last few years to fund our sidewalk projects we've done. In 2019, we did that sidewalk and ADA ramp project using accumulated funds from REIT. And then this year we're using REIT funds, as I mentioned, to support the 36 ramps we're updating on Jamison Street. So that kind of is what this summarizes. Our street overlay and chip seal program, which Nathan is doing a very able job of maintaining for us. We have budgeted in 2020 $150,000 from local access for doing chip seals and overlays. We have cut some of those projects back due to the COVID-19 concerns again, but that's what this CW2 program represents. We do try to shoot between $100,000 and $150,000 a year on that, and we've been doing a pretty good job of catching up with our street maintenance over the last few years, and we're hoping we can maintain that momentum. Is going to be tougher with our budget challenges. The final thing is just our actual operations and maintenance cost. This is basically our crew and ER&R transfers and the other things that go into that. It's about 730,000 a year. It was 774 in 2020 for this. It increases every year for inflation. There's a 20-year totals on all three of these if you're interested. Those are from the 2016 comp plan. They've no doubt changed some, but the numbers are pretty big as you add them up over time on what we're spending on our transportation system. Okay, next slide, please. I think this is the last one. This is just a tabular version of what I just described to you. So I'll open it up for any comments or questions on the tip now. Again, this is a first reading tonight, no action requested. We'll bring it back to you on July 8th for possible action on the tip. So if you have any questions tonight, I'll be glad to address them, or again, on the 8th, you'll have the opportunity as well. Thank you.
This is Jermaine Cornegay, Councilmember Cornegay. My question is, when we put off the projects right now, can we, what's the process of bringing those projects back, or does it depend on the project?
Well, everything depends on the project, but anything that we're delaying right now, we're just shifting it down a year. So they remain in, we've already prioritized them, so anything that does get bounced down a year or two, it remains in that priority listing basically, and that'll be the next thing we do once funding permits.
I see. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, Councilman Allen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you said you brought to fruition the Jameson Street. I was noticing under the Fisher Construction Group, you had a question mark on sales tax. Is that excluding, or is that with sales tax on the Jameson Street 2020 PW02?
Well, that's a typo I didn't catch. I apologize. It is included.
Oh, okay, because I thought my ears are going bad, my eyes are going bad, and I'm getting old. So, I mean, it was, but it was at 473,704 then, right?
Correct. And so there's no evidence of deterioration on your part because you caught the typo.
Okay, well, what'd you say?
Okay. No, I thank you for picking up that error there and commenting on it, but sales tax is definitely included.
Okay, is there anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
I have questions for Mark, if that's okay.
go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, Mark, very, very well done, very comprehensive, easy to understand. Thank you for that. I did not hear your term that I've been hearing for the past 7 years, which was illustrative. So all these are important projects. My question are kind of limited to citywide 7, which are inclusive of Ward 6, of which that's what I represent. So Wicker, yes, indeed needs some attention. Of course, Jameson, we're sharing the same concerns as my neighboring council member, Allen, with Jameson. So if I'm looking at this correctly, we're looking at, with Jameson doing some paving, there's a possible roundabout, a possible pork chop on 11th Street to be right in, right out only. And you're looking to do some other improvements on Railroad. I saw Railroad was just done a couple years ago, and it's a very awesome road for people to now speed on. So I was wondering, in this project, is there any traffic calming, any engineering solutions that we're throwing in, especially on Wicker and on Jameson Railroad, as those tend to be one of the 42 spots that Chief Tucker alludes to as where you can find people doing excessive speed. So I'm glad we're on those projects. So I'm just wondering about engineering solutions for traffic calming, especially on Wicker and Railroad and Jameson, and then also bringing up the question, we just did a very nice job of redoing Railroad. I see this is in the future. Is that when we're anticipating we'd have to do work on it anyway, so we're not ripping up something nice to put in something nicer. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, the railroad improvements are in that, I didn't use the term this year, but the 2026 to 40 version of this, or 27, I guess it is, that illustrative list. So it's quite a ways out there. We generally look at an overlay like we did there to be good for about 20 years. The project's a little sooner than that. What it really represents is a long-term desire to upgrade all the arterial streets to make them with curbs, sidewalks, drainage, and sidewalks. So they're quite a ways out there on those and shouldn't conflict with what we've already done. For instance, the work we'll do on John Liner Road in particular, we had a TIB overlay on that back about 2011 or 12. I've forgotten the actual date. You know, we're not going to tear any of that out. We're going to just basically use that as the base for the new project and do an overlay on it. Nothing is lost on these things as long as the old pavement is still suitable. So.
And traffic calming?
Traffic calming. We don't have anything built in the Jameson overlay project this year. You're 100% correct that the day you pave it is the day the complaints start getting louder on those things. So we have the option on Jameson of looking at things like we did at Dunlop and Township Street, some kind of small compact roundabout, low cost thing if necessary. Don't like to use those on arterials if we can avoid it, just because of fire apparatus and those kind of things. But I anticipate we'll be having that discussion on Jameson coming up next year.
Possible ADA ramp bulb outs.
Yeah, we didn't look at them just for dollar purposes. We have 36 of them to do, and it was already a huge project. I think it was about 190,000 to do that. And to build bulb outs, you have to do drainage to make those work. And it just wasn't in the cards with the money we had available for this time around. So we'll probably have to look at some other kind of calming devices besides that kind of a thing.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Great presentation. So moving on, we have a lot yet to get through. We are headed to new business, and the first thing on new business is the Skagit County 2020 Multi-Jurisdiction Hazard Mitigation Plan. First read. Mr. Coleman, you're on.
All right, thank you. I think I mentioned this at our last council meeting. This is something that all of the jurisdictions have been working, all of the jurisdictions in Skagit County have been working cooperatively on to satisfy the FEMA's requirements for a natural hazard mitigation plan. FEMA's already approved the draft plan, so now all that's left is for each of the jurisdictions to pass a resolution stating that they are adopting this emergency management plan, and then it'll be official that it is the Sedro-Woolley hazard mitigation plan, and that'll make us eligible for any future grants related to natural disasters. So there is a requested action, and on page 110 of your packet with recommended language for a motion. But this is a first read. I only put that there in case the council wanted to possibly pass something today. If not, it's the first read. There's no rush. We can put this on the agenda for the next council meeting.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Coleman? Okay. Hearing none, did the council wish to move forward with a motion, or shall we save this for July 8th?
This is Councilmember Cornegay. I suggest we save it until we have all of our council members, or at least more than 5.
Sounds good. All right, so moving on, then we are headed to the fees for accessory dwelling units, the ADUs, and possible emergency moratorium on ADUs. So Mr. Coleman, this is also you, and looks like you'll be looking for action tonight, and that would be ordinance 1957-20.
All right. So I apologize for having to bring an emergency moratorium for codes that don't actually exist yet. So let me explain what's going on. So back in March, the City Council approved amendments to the comprehensive plan and the development regulations to allow accessory dwelling units. So there was a lot of discussion at the council level at that. It was approved, and the council had put an effective date on it of July 1st. That the delay between the time that it was passed in March and July 1st was intended to give the council time to discuss all of the potential impacts of ADUs and how they could be mitigated through our fees, particularly the transportation impact fee, the sewer connection fee, and the park impact fee. Shortly after the council approved the ADU ordinance, just a matter of days really, the COVID-19 closures began. And so along with those, there was the governor's requirement that we couldn't discuss any new topics at city council meetings unless they were related to COVID-19. So ADUs clearly not related to COVID-19, so council has not had the opportunity to discuss fees until now. So I'm recommending that we place a moratorium on the development regulations addressing ADUs to basically put the effective date of the ordinances that we already approved down the road a little, so we can have the opportunity to talk about fees. And I know that there's some concerns about those, and they're complex, and I don't want to rush anything. So before I get into the discussion of the fees as proposed, that's the second part of this discussion, wanted to see if the council is willing to pass an emergency moratorium in order to give the council some time to talk about fees. Even if we were to pass something tonight, which we're not prepared to do, it wouldn't go into effect until after July 1st. So that was really the impetus for having a emergency moratorium. The recommended moratorium is on page 117, and the recommended motion to pass a emergency moratorium on accessory dwelling units is in the council memo on page 115 of your packet if you're looking for language.
So are there any questions for John? If not, is there a motion?
One question. Madam Mayor, I have a question for John, which is, John, how many moratoriums can we have?
Nikki can answer that better.
Okay.
Effectively, we can have several, but passing one is not a big deal. It gives that's pretty regular, and they're usually good for 6 months. I think that's the extent of time that we put on this one, and we can remove it at any time. That's just the amount of time that we put the moratorium on.
Yeah,
And,
so were you asking how many times this can be extended?
Yes. Thank you, Nikki.
Oh, okay.
I
So
think that's Nikki.
John's absolutely right. As long as you have a work plan, it can be extended. But initially, it's a 6-month moratorium that can be rescinded at any time when you have had an opportunity to review fees and make some decisions there.
Thank you, Nikki.
Very good. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
Council. I'm just going to say that possibly a moratorium. Councilman Cornegie came out. We don't have a full forum tonight. I think we should maybe wait until we have a full council to make this. This is my view. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say.
Well, so John, I think you'll need to address this, but I think what he's concerned about is that when we passed the ADUs, it was to go into effect July 1st. And as it stands now, we do not have fees set in place for that. So that's why the moratorium is to give us time to address the fees. Is that correct, Mr. Coleman?
Correct. And so the effective date of the ADU ordinance is July 1st. So if we wait till July 8th to pass a moratorium, there will have been a week's time in which people may be trying to apply for accessory dwelling unit permits, and that would be the problem right there. We wouldn't have the fees in place to charge properly. So it kind of makes a mess of the permitting if we don't have that in place.
So with that in mind, is there someone who would like to make a motion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
I know I'm speaking twice, so if there's someone else wants to speak, I can stand by.
Is there someone else who would like to?
So my question is, John, during the Planning Commission's deliberations last year, which went on for 8-9 months, were fees brought up? Was there discussion about fees? And can you maybe talk a little bit more about that at the Planning Commission, please? Thank you.
So the Planning Commission did kind of kick it around a little. I didn't direct them to make any recommendations on fees because fees are really something that council needs to decide on. And the Planning Commission in the 15 years that I've been working with them hasn't really weighed in on what appropriate fees are. So I left the discussion entirely for the council to decide.
Thank you, John. Madam Mayor, I have a motion.
All right. I have a motion
Ordinance number 1957-20, an interim ordinance of the City of Sedro-Woolley, Washington, adopting a moratorium on the processing or accepting of applications, permits, and licensing, and establishing for any accessory dwelling units, providing for a public hearing, establishing the effective date, and providing that the moratorium, unless extended, it will sunset within 6 months of the date of adoption. Thank you.
Second.
was that you, Mr. Owen?
Councilman Couch, second.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Councilman Couch. So we have a motion by Councilman DeYoung, seconded by Councilman Couch to make the motion to adopt ordinance 1957. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. John, did you want to continue on with some sort of a discussion, or are you?
Now we're just getting to the important part, is discussing the proposed fees for sewer connection fees, traffic impact fees, and park impact fees. So thank you, first of all, Council, for giving us some time so we can discuss this important issue without having a lot of terrible amount of pressure on us to get it done quickly. It is not the intent to drag this out any longer. It's just with the COVID-19 closures, we haven't had the opportunity. So I wanted to get the ball rolling for sure. So like I said, there's 3 fees that are under discussion. The transportation fee is the first one of them, and I know that there's been some concern about from the council about what those fees would be and if they were appropriate. So on page 120 of the packet, and Phil, if you could go to that page, it might be helpful. This is the 2-tiered system that is proposed for the accessory dwelling unit transportation impact fee. And this table itself is from it's the adopted transportation impact fee schedule. And what I've done is I've put it there in red with the new fees that don't exist now. So red would be the new fees as proposed. And what you can see is if a single family detached house at the top there in the regular part of the city, the non-CBD, would be $2,407. Now, Mark Freiberger and I, with the assistance of TSI, looked at other jurisdictions, how they handle ADUs, and what we saw was that there was other jurisdictions that were using about 61% of a standard single-family house for a larger ADU, and half of that for a smaller ADU. So what that currently figures is about $1,500 for a large ADU, or $740 for a smaller ADU. And keep in mind, the largest ADU we allow is 800 square feet, and the smallest we allow is 204 square feet. Anything over 250 square feet would be the larger, and anything under 450 square feet would be considered a smaller. The point that 0.61 comes from the same as a townhouse. That was what other jurisdictions used to justify the amount of traffic for an ADU. So it's not just pulled out of the air. It's chosen from a smaller type of housing unit, such as a townhouse. So that's the transportation. On the next page, on page 121, what we've done is we've looked at the connection fee for sewer. And we use the same criteria. If a single family connection currently is, I think it's 8,000, a single family connection to sewer right now is 8,495 per unit. So if we use that same figure, which is 0.61, again, that's on page 121 of the council pack, then you'll see the fee would again be reduced for an ADU to that amount. And then similar with, then we have the two-tier system. If the ADU that's smaller than 450 square feet would be 0.305 of standard sewer connection, and if it's a ADU that's over 450 square feet, it would be 0.61% of a full $8,400 connection. And finally,
Don, are you looking for questions or input or?
At any time, I'd just like to point out that then on page 120 packet is the fees for the proposed fees for park impact fees. So we used those same ratios, 0.61 for a large ADU and 0.305 for a smaller ADU. Park impact fee is $1,500 right now. So a small ADU would be $475, and a large ADU would be $915. If you have any questions at any time, I'm happy to address them.
John, I guess where does why does the square footage come into play? Because I don't see that, if we take traffic, for example, because it's laid out in a nicer spreadsheet. If we don't have, large apartments or small apartments classified by square footage. So I guess why are we doing this for ADUs, and why can't we just classify, an ADU category and not complicate it by having various categories depending on the square footage? Because like I said, we don't do that with apartments or townhouses or anything else.
That's a really good question. So what we've done is we were using the Clackamas County study that broke it down into 2 different sizes, and it just seemed reasonable. Once you get below 450, you're very little chance that you'll have more than 1, maybe 2 people in there. You're not going to be having families in something that small. You're talking about something that's barely much larger than an RV. So we were borrowing a recommended schedule from a different community that did a nice study on it. And I think Mark Freiberger in Public Works looked at it and thought that it made sense from his perspective as well. So we had a couple of eyes on that. To be clear, we can set these fees anywhere we want. What staff tried to do is find some studies that showed how other jurisdictions did it, and had pretty good reasoning behind them. And we were using something that was based on some real world figures, and that's why we chose these numbers.
Yeah, John, if I could add to that, in the interest of, having a transparent, supportable rate structure here, we did 2 things. On the sewer part of it, we engaged Katie Isaacson to take a look at agencies that have adopted ordinances that deal with ADUs. And she had quite a bit of material to support this, and then she came up with figures that are what you see there. We did the same with our transportation impact fee on the road side of things. We had TSI that had just completed the transportation impact fee analysis. Knowing that this was coming, I had them do the same thing, look for some comparable agencies. That's where the Clackamas County one that John has mentioned a couple of times comes from. And they had done a study to come up with this, and the numbers roughly that were the same. They weren't identical, but the 0.61 was the same. The other part was roughly half. So we thought, for clarity's purpose, we would use the same split for above and below 450 square foot. But again, we have documentation to support how we came up with these rates for ADU units.
So this is Councilmember Cornegay. Thank you. And my question is regarding schools. I can't remember what we discussed when it came to schools. I remember that coming up. I still get questions about that. And I see only Bellingham included it for single family, and then for ADUs, they exempted it. And I'm just curious how that works. Is that even possible? I don't see that anyone else has touched schools. I'm not sure. I can't remember why.
Okay, so I've got a few things to add to that comment. So if you're referring to attachment 5, which has a nice list of what other jurisdictions have done as far as how much they charge per, and whether or not they waive fees for ADUs. That's a comprehensive but not a complete list. We weren't able to find data for every city and for every housing type, and for every fee type either. So it's an incomplete list at best, but provides some pretty good information. As far as the school impact fee, we worked with the Sedro-Woolley School District to see what their capital facility plan says about ADUs. So this, the school district actually set does math and has the comprehensive plan information that discusses school impact fees. So we get that information from them and their capital facilities plan. Their capital facilities plan does not address accessory dwelling units as a specific housing type. So we spoke with the school district about how they wanted to handle ADUs. Should we charge a fee for schools, or should we be collecting an impact fee for ADUs for schools? And they said no, that their comprehensive plan does not address ADUs, and so they said to not collect school impact fees for ADUs at this time. You know, they'll be working on updates to their school capital facility plan near future, and they may or may not address that.
I see. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so John, do you have anything else to add, or it sounds like it's a conversation that will continue on?
Yeah, I had no intention of trying to get anything passed tonight. But if these figures look good to the council, we can bring a proposed ordinance to them at the next council meeting for possible adoption, or at least you'll have the option to pass something next time. Or if we have if council has any direction for staff to make any specific changes, we can look at that too.
All right.
Mayor Julia.
Yes, Councilman Allen.
Oh, Councilman John, the only thing I would ask you, and I think this thing has come out very well, maybe consider what impact on schools that the schools may impose down the road before we adopt anything. That makes sense?
Well, that's a little bit tough because the school district tells us what their recommended school impact fees are. We don't set those figures, so they would actually have to do all of the math and analysis to determine what an impact fee for an ADU should be, and they would also need to update their capital facility plan, which they're not going to get that done in any time soon. I think they have their capital facility plan scheduled to be updated next year, but with everything that's going on, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that or not. So
well, I was just thinking they might be sharpening their pencils really hard right now. So anyway, I don't want to punish people. So I want to stay on top of it.
All right, thank you. Well, if there are no more questions, certainly, come July 8th, bring them to the next council meeting. Good to have a robust discussion regarding this. So John, is there anything else you want to add before I move on to our late materials?
Mark, did you want to say anything about how that fee plays into recreational vehicle fees?
Yes, I would. In fact, I had two things I'd like to just add to the discussion. First, the attachment 2 that's in this list is based on the existing transportation impact fee schedule. As I mentioned earlier, we'll have the updated version of that on the agenda for July the 8th. I believe that will go in concert with this discussion. And it will have an updated table. We are recommending a slight increase in the transportation impact fee rates based on the study that TSI did for us. And so that'll affect what you see in this table as well. So we'll be referring to the transportation impact fee which will be, when it's adopted, will be an attachment to that is referenced in the municipal code for calculation of impact fees. That's the first thing I wanted to make sure you knew about. This, it won't be exactly this table you're seeing in attachment 2. The second thing is we are working, have been reviewing, both the planning department and public works, a RV facility out on Fruitdale Road. There's been a pre-app. We've had continuing discussions. And we have a similar dilemma with that. Our code currently doesn't deal with RV facilities. We cover mobile home parks and various other things, but nothing on that line. And so we can, it is a permitted use in the city, in the zone that is proposed for. So that's not really at issue. But what is at issue is what we charge for impact fees for the facility. The proponent of that project had done some background work to come up with sewer impact fees and came in with a really high in the sky assessment of what those fees would be. What I did is calculated them based on fixture units, which is the way we calculate commercial units in town, which you look at the sinks and the toilets, and our code has a certain number of fixture units allocated to each one of those. And I came up with a certain figure, and it was quite high. They were proposing quite a few units, so it was proportionally fairly high. And they were subsequently shocked. They thought that they had done their adequate research, and they hadn't. We went back and engaged Katie Isaacson again to take another look at that, because there was quite a discrepancy between what they thought and what we did based on their understanding of codes. So we looked at 14 different cities in Western Washington and a couple in Eastern that they had referred to, and found out they had just misinterpreted the code. Our calculation was correct. So as a part of this process we're talking about with ADUs, we thought it would be prudent to add in something about RV units as well. And so we'll have that information coming to you as well. There is a nuance, and the reason it kind of ties in with ADUs is they were still choking with the rates that we came up with after we explained all that to them. I did say that, you know, another way of looking at this would be to look at them in the square foot breakdown we have for ADUs, which we were proposing to council to you, and which would be slightly lower than if we did it on fixture units. And so I don't know if council will be interested in looking at that option. Our existing code based on fixture units is quite defensible, albeit somewhat expensive. And again, RVs are generally on the smaller side. I mean, even these big bus type RVs that go around are less than 300 square feet. So they would fit in that category of the 0.305 if you looked at them from an ADU range or way of looking at it. So we will bring that back to you with this discussion. I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's another thing we need to deal with here. You know, we are semi-supportive of the project in that it would be a fairly decent use out there. There are some questions about RV parks in general and how they're maintained, that kind of stuff, and those kind of things will be in that discussion as well. So that was the two things I wanted to add to this conversation.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, if there are no other comments or questions, and hearing none, we will move on to our late materials. And this is the Winnie Hauser pavement project. Came in late this afternoon. It is Mark.
Yeah, so we closed bids yesterday on that. I've got a good bid from Lakeside Industries. Lakeside, well known to us. They've done most of the paving projects either as a subcontractor or a contractor for the city for quite a few years. There isn't much competition out there. This particular time, Central Paving, who has also done projects for us in the past and was the second bidder, bid on the project, and then Granite, who has their own asphalt plant up in Everson. The other pavers you see are basically companies that were buying the mix from somebody and then installing it. So I was surprised with the number of bids, but it was all good. The estimates, or the final cost, was about 17% under our engineer's estimate for the job. And again, it's an asphalt price break for us. And so apologize for bringing it to you as late materials. It just closed bids yesterday. Nathan asked me this morning if it might be possible to bring it forward, just because he wants to get this under contract as soon as possible. They're trying to make an August 1st completion date for the paving work. So again, I apologize for the late materials, but I thought it was fairly straightforward with good bids, no problems with the bids. And so we're actually recommending to you that you authorize the mayor to execute the attached agreement with Lakeside and for the Winnie Hauser Park parking lot in the amount of $137,200.42.
Thank you, Mark.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would move to authorize Mayor Johnson to execute the attached agreement 2020 PS 29 with Lakeside Industries for paving of Winnie Hauser Park lot for the amount of $137,200.
Second.
$137,242 including sales tax.
Second.
Okay. I had a motion by Councilman Couch, seconded by Councilman McGoffin. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Very good. All right, so it is 5:38 and we're coming up on close to 2 hours. If there's nothing for the good of the order, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.